annual Color of Excellence, honoring Dr. Perry. My name is Anthony Thomas, and tonight, it's great to be with you. As you all know, COVID-19 is a pandemic that has caused a significant hardship in every aspect of our lives. But through days of joy and years of pain, we will persevere together. Right now, I'd like to take a small moment of silence to honor those that we've lost. Thank you. Tonight, as we celebrate Dr. Aubrey Perry, the Tallahassee chapters of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Omega Lamplighters, and the Junior Lamplighters are going to bring to you a night worthy of the highest of superlatives. We have history, we have an oratorical competition, and we also have a step show. So, as we enjoy our evening, sit back and relax from the comforts of your own home. Thank you. And now we will have the Black Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Aubrey Thomas.
Good evening. Today is another day in the struggle for the liberation of Black people. This liberation demands revolution. The revolution lives within me. For I am the hope of a slave, the antagonist of the white supremacy conclave. I am the definition of ebony, a dense, black, heavy, hard, durable wood that safeguards everything in my neighborhood. I digest the delicious history of the African diaspora with my Caribbean cousins like breakfast molasses. For I am a descendant of Nubian kings and queens and those who survived the chains of the Middle Passage. You can try to incarcerate my body by convicting me of some trumped up crime, but my will is derived from the visions in Harriet Tubman's mind. We both know that your justice is profane, and you and your legal system have no disdain for how Crispus Attucks' children are constantly being slain. So I stay woke and sharp like Thurgood Marshall's versus the Brown professors, because I will make sure that my children are more intelligent than their oppressors. You can't kill this revolution with no federal Marcus Garvey COINTELPRO plot for Benjamin Banneker's DNA, almanac, and watch serve as my internal clock. And if you kill me, I leave you with this warning. My tenacious pups will wake up even more vigilant the next morning and say, "Good morning, today's another day in the struggle for the liberation of Black people. This liberation demands revolution. The revolution lives within me."
And now, we will have Meet Dr. Perry.
Brother Aubrey Perry Sr. was born January 14, 1937 in Petersburg, Virginia. He graduated from Peabody High School in 1954, where he was involved in school clubs, music organizations, and athletics. Brother Perry's thirst for knowledge led him to Virginia State College, where he earned his BA in history and MS in psychology. While at Virginia, Brother Perry pledged the 1956 fall line, the Mighty 12, of the New Psi chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. From there, he went on to Florida State University, becoming the first African American to receive his PhD in clinical psychology from Florida State in 1972. Brother Perry is a professor of psychology at Florida A&M University, formerly chairperson of the FAMU Department of Psychology and director of Division of Social and Behavior Sciences. He was appointed Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at FAMU in 1984. Brother Perry is a licensed psychologist in the state of Florida and is a former chair and member of the Board of Psychological Examiners for the state of Florida.
And now, we would like to share with you a Black History Fact video.
I am the Reverend Charles Kinsey Steele, known as C.K. Steele. I received my education from a historical Black college, known as Morehouse College. I was one of the main organizers of the 1956 Tallahassee bus boycott, after 2 Black college students were arrested for sitting in the whites-only section on a city bus here in Tallahassee. I marched with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And what I want others to know is I follow a life of public service, and I want my legacy to remain strong.
And now for our oratorial competition. The title tonight is, Where Do You See Yourself in the Next 10 Years? Now, for our middle school orators.
When I had to think about what I learned about myself and America in 2020, two things stood out. The first thing was that I've been taking a lot of things for granted. Life is short, and you can be here today and gone tomorrow. I did not appreciate things that were so normal until everything changed. The second thing I learned was that although America has come a long way, we still have a way to go. 2020 started off with the death of Kobe Bryant. For a while, every channel, social media site, and conversation was about his death. The entire world was shocked. There were people crying, posting, and describing how much Kobe's death affected them. Not just basketball players, but athletes from every sport talked about how much they would miss him. It seemed all unreal. But I realized that it could have been one of my family members, or friends. Not too long after Kobe Bryant's death, the pandemic hit. Instantly, we were told to wear masks, social distance, and we were on lockdown. I went from going to school to remote learning, and I loved it. Not having to wake up, get dressed, and go to school, it was a dream come true. Well, at least that's what I thought at first. As time went by, I started to miss going to school, seeing my friends, being able to go out of town to the movies, birthday parties, or even the mall. This was our new normal. And then in June, my aunt passed away from cancer. I was able to see her before she died and say goodbye, but unfortunately most people don't get that chance. I learned that I took so much for granted. America has come far, but we still have so much more to go. In 2016, during the 49ers preseason game, Colin Kaepernick sat during the playing of the national anthem as a protest against racial injustice, police brutality, and systematic oppression in this country. The following week, and throughout the season, he kneeled during the anthem. This caused controversy because some people thought he was disrespecting the flag. Most black people understood that though we say, "I pledge allegiance to the flag," we are not living with liberty and justice for all. There have been so many black men dying and treated unfairly because of the color of our skin. So again, I learned that America still has a long way to go. I learned that I'll be judged before I even open my mouth. I learned that a police officer could shoot someone just like me and get away with it. I learned that a police officer could level a neck on a black man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while he's crying for help, crying for his mother, while we're watching and videotaping. I knew about Trayvon Martin, but seeing this happen repeatedly, it taught me that if I got stopped by the police, if I make a wrong move, it could really be my last. I learned because of my skin, I could be targeted. I learned that although police are supposed to protect and serve, they see me as a threat. And because of that, I have to get taught at the age of 12. Don't make sudden movements. Even if they give me permission to look at my ID, ask if it's okay, then move slowly. But nevertheless, in the great words of Dr. Martin Luther King, we must accept disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. I felt that hope as I watched the inauguration. I witnessed the first female vice president, who is also African American, make history. In closing, 2020 was filled with so many emotions and lessons. I'll use these lessons to better myself. I've learned to cherish moments and not lose hope. Thank you.
Do you think COVID-19 ruined our lives? I believe that COVID-19 changed many lives, and I will tell you how it changed me and my family's lives, and people in the outside world too. During this quarantine period, me and my family have been together more than I've ever remembered. I learned about my mom's childhood, and my dad helped me and my siblings learn more about our religion and spirituality. To begin, during quarantine, my family has been together 5 to 6 times a week, just having a good time, talking loud, and playing games. During COVID, me and my family took a trip to South Carolina. And so on this trip, we went to a safari, and since our house was close to the beach, we went to the beach at least 3 times a day. On the last night, we had a seafood boil and did karaoke. This trip will be remembered forever. To continue, during COVID, my mom has told me how she had to walk her sisters to school and go to her school on the same day, and how her mom treated her. And it really helped me understand her more. She told me how she met my dad by asking him to help her move in and didn't even realize they went to college together. While they were telling us these experiences, it helped me appreciate them more than I already did, knowing what they had to get through to be where they are. My dad helps us with our spirituality by doing what we call devotion every morning. At the start of devotion, we say this, repeat after me. I am what God says I am. I can do what God says I can do. I believe what God says about what the word says about me. And I'm a world changer through the blood of Jesus Christ. Doing this has helped us more than I could ever imagine. It makes us want to read the Bible, and he explains it, and it helps us understand it more, so one day we can get saved ourselves. Furthermore, COVID-19 slowed us down enough to realize the racial injustice in our country. Many black people have died just because of their skin color. Before COVID, I thought that racism ended with segregation. But during COVID, I heard what happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and many more. Their deaths caused people to march to try to end this brutality. I know I want it to end. In conclusion, this was my COVID-19 experience. So even though it has some downsides, you can still have a good time and be safe during COVID. Thank you.
My name is Kayla Johnson. I'm in the 7th grade in an Omega Junior Lamplighters. What I've learned living in America in 2020 is the most important thing I've learned about myself is how to appreciate the little things in life and look at the bright side of life. I think Americans got a little taste of how life was in the early 1800s, places where we Americans' social gatherings shut down, like our movie theaters, arcades, sports arenas, and our schools. I also learned how to appreciate my ancestors even more, what they have gone through in the 1800s. I learned that going to school played a big part of my life. Oh, how I miss school and my friends. We Americans had to adjust staying 6 feet apart and wearing our masks. A lot has changed in the last year, and I don't think things will go completely normal soon. This time at home has taught us a lot, though I think for many, we are learning life lessons and resetting our priorities. Last but not least, I learned that Black Lives Matter. It was the latest example of changes made in America last year when 2020 became the year of racial reckoning, following up with George Floyd's death in May, and subsequently buildings changed names, statues that had to be removed, and flags that changed in the last 12 months.
And now for our elementary school orders.
The year 2020 changed my life in many ways. I learned many things about myself last year. My entire life I've always went to the school building, but now I was required to do school from home, from March to June, and from August to December. I learned how to manage my time and keep myself organized. I also learned how to be independent and responsible. I learned that I enjoy learning new things. I learned about the stock market and how money grows. I purchased stocks from cruise ships and hotels like Carnival and Marriott since they were cheap. I also learned that I enjoy watching the news and making guesses on what stocks to buy based on the events. I like using my money to buy things I like to buy. In 2020, while at home, I learned about the Black Lives Matter movement and it brought awareness and justice to Black people. I loved seeing people protest peacefully to bring awareness and try to stop this violence. This is something that can happen to me as a Black boy. We started a family business and I learned that it takes hard work, and I mean hard work, to achieve your goals. I enjoyed being a part of the business, and I also like helping to come up with ideas. I learned that I'm not so bad at yard work or painting. Lastly, I paid close attention to the 2020 presidential election. I learned that one day I could be in a political office too. These are some things I learned about myself in the year 2020.
What have I learned about myself in America, and 2020 has changed my life. I I learned that I am an outside person. Being in the house all day is too much for me. I did enjoy distance learning. I am more independent than I thought. I learned about the Black Lives Matter movement in America. I even had the chance to meet George Floyd's family during the trunk or treat event with my Lamplighter family. Coronavirus is real because I survived it. 2020 changed my life in several ways. I was not able to attend school in person. I was not able to enjoy any family vacations. I wasn't able to play sports. But during the pandemic, I was inducted to the Jam Lamplighters, and I am enjoying every minute of it.
And now, we'll have another Black History video.
Jim Brown was a professional football player. He played running back. After he retired, he became a motivational speaker, and he led us into the BLM Black Lives Matter protests. Believe it or not, Donald Trump supported his program, American. Jim Brown is the reason we can live in freedom without racism and equality. Thanks to Jim Brown, now we can live free.
And now, our high school orders.
Good evening. My name is David LeConte. I'm part of the Omega Lamplighters, and I'm going to be talking about what I have witnessed in 2020. In 2020, my life was going good until I heard about the passing of one of my favorite basketball players, Kobe B. Bryant. He died in a helicopter crash, him and 9 others. And one of those others was his daughter, Gigi Bryant. And the sad part about that was she was our age, well, my age. She was young, Black. It's crazy how nowadays I am able to wake up from God, and I would like to thank Him for that. Another bad thing that affected my life was COVID. This is the main thing I wanted to get to because it was the most traumatizing thing ever. It started in 2019, but it really wasn't getting back until 2020. I learned how to find happiness in the simple things I do with my family and friends. But now I can't do that anymore. A lot of things needed from my house was like tissue, food items, and etc. wasn't available in stores like normal, and this caused hardship. It was hard to really start interacting with others or going to places to see my family with masks and gloves. My thoughts were, is this really how it's going to be forever? When the sudden passing of Mr. Chadwick Boseman and how he accomplished so much, undergoing chemotherapy, and still remained positive, so I knew there was going to be peace undercoming this storm. It amazed me how the difficult times will really show you the truth about life and the people around you, but what I know and will always be the outcome for me, thanks to my beautiful mom. For we walk by faith, not through sight. Not by sight, sorry. 2 Corinthians 5-7. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is DeWall Williams. 2020. This year may go down as one of the wildest 365 days in history. From the outbreak of a virus to the off-railing of social media. From Black Lives Matter protests to wildfires, to the death of great celebrities and role models in our community. Yes, this year has been a roller coaster of events. This year has become one of the biggest learning experiences for me, helping me understand myself and the world around me. The first thing I learned this year is what it means to invest in yourself. When I say invest, I don't mean money, but time. When I say invest in myself, I mean work on self-improvement. Being quarantined in my house, I found myself working on skills I had more and more often. Because I had so much time on my hands, I was able to focus more on following my passion, which was art. I started investing more time to my craft and how I could bring it to the next level. This led me to go from just doing digital drawings to having my drawings on t-shirts and hoodies. And though I was not able to go out and interact with people, I took this time to start developing social skills and my charisma. And I also decided to take this time to educate myself more on my community, because it was during this time where I felt like I needed to know what's going on in America. May 25th, 2020, a disturbing video surfaced on the web. A video of a police officer kneeling on a black man's neck while he cries out for mercy. The video of George Floyd's death due to police brutality shook the nation. And this was only one out of countless videos of police brutality and gun violence that surfaced during this time. These videos set the world and its people ablaze, causing mass violent protests in parts of the state. These events opened my eyes to the amount of hate and negativity that circulates in our country. But it wasn't until the death of my own line brother due to gun violence where I realized that as a black man, I need to make sure to remember to uphold myself in these trying times. That yes, it is okay to feel afraid, powerless, and angry, but I also need to stand strong and control my emotions for my peers and my family, and to bring positivity to my community. But the most important thing I learned during 2020 was to take things slow and have patience. There's a writer on YouTube that goes by the name of Sage Rand, and he once said, "Nobody can tell you that you're wasting time because it's a unique relationship with every person. What's wasting time to you, someone else is reclaiming theirs." And this spoke to me on a deep level. Before this time, I would consistently try to rush things and will always keep working, trying to do so much in so little time. So I wouldn't feel as if I was wasting my own time. While I continued working on my mindset was good in hindsight, before I would know it, I would have burned myself out and would stress myself. So when the outbreak of the virus caused the world to stop, forcing everybody to stay inside, I had no idea what to do with myself. Now I was spending my time locked in my room with little nothing to do. So with nothing to do, I sat and I think. I reflected. I thought about things that made me happy, things that made me sad, things that stressed me, things that made me angry. This time gave me a chance to address and fix things that were previously nerving me. I gave myself time, burying myself mentally. I realized that yes, I should always be striving to achieve my goals and give 100% whatever I do. But I need to remember to take things easy sometimes and slow down. Because greatness, just like a tree, takes time to grow. You can't rush greatness. To conclude, though this year was filled with many hardships, it gave me time to reflect, time to understand, and time to improve. This year has brought me to new lows, but in my own words, the lower you go, then the higher you can rise.
Greetings and humble salutations. I am Terrence Bernard McPherson Jr. I am a senior at the James S. Rickers High School. I serve as the captain of the history-making Rickers High School football team, FLSC Scholarship Award winner, a bowl for the Tallahassee Lynx Battalion, Best and Brightest Award nominee for the regional president of the Omega Lamplighters, member of the Rickers High School track team, and a National Honor Society student. 2020 has been a crazy year, starting from the death of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, to the impeachment of Donald Trump, to the death of Aubrey, COVID-19 shut down the entire world immediately, which leads to the death of Breonna Taylor immediately as well, which leads to George Floyd's death, to Black Lives Matter movements and marches, to the death of Chadwick Boseman, and finally leading to the COVID-19 vaccine. All these things which has affected me and the rest of the world. It has been completely hectic, but it has made me grow stronger mentally, more and more. When COVID first started, I was mentally frustrated and down for a little minute. But then I realized school will be online, which means I can prepare my body to get the way I want it to be. Bigger, faster, and stronger than anyone on the football field. I also want to get smarter in the classroom. So I improved to start studying more and more for the ACT and SAT. Which means I was able to invest in myself more and more. I was able to finish the school year with all A's, and then notice I was growing more and more, getting way more mature than I usually was. When my brother graduated from 5th grade, I began to talk to him more and more about things such as relationships, school, sports, and etc. Because I knew what it feels like to not have someone to talk to about those things. I have a bigger brother, but we never talked about those things. So I wanted to instill those things in him before I knew I was going to leave for college. Dealing with crimes around the world with police brutality and Black Lives Matter movements, which made me honestly fear for my life. I stayed strong and gained I stayed strong and had a boost of encouragement to never be afraid of the task at hand or whatever is happening in front of me. It changed my life tremendously because I was a shy but talented kid. But this year was a statement year for me, in the community and for sports. I made sure everyone knew who Terry McPherson Jr. was. Looked my name up on the internet and in the newspaper. I had a tremendous year for football by being the captain of the history. I had a tremendous year for football by being the captain of the history-making James Rodgers High School football team, ending the season with 105 tackles, 2 touchdowns, 13 sacks, 6 pass deflections, 1 interception leading to a touchdown, 1 block punt that led to a touchdown, 20 quarterback hurries, and being chosen as one of the quarterbacks to be nominated for the second team Aubrey Award. It was a terrific year, and I can't do nothing but thank the man up above. I talked the most on the field as a leader and as a trash talker, because I knew that if I was talking trash, I would have to back it up, and I did exactly that. I was confident enough to know that the man in front of me is not better than me, so I beat him every play. Every game, a coach would come up to me and say, "You're an amazing player. Keep grinding, kid." And that let me know I did my job. I put fear in the team and coaches. This year has been amazing, and I love it. It has taught me to never give up and always do your best in anything you do. Again, I am Terrence Bernard McPherson Jr. I am a senior at the Great James S. Rodgers High School. I serve as captain of the history-making Rodgers High School football team, FLSC Scholarship Award winner, a bowl of the Tallahassee Links Battalion, a Best and Brightest Award nominee, regional president of the Lamplighters nominee, member of the Rodgers High School track team, and a National Honor Society student. And with the help of 2020, I'm a relentless, humble, goal pursuer, smart, mature, and confident African-American student athlete. Thank you.
And while the judges are out, we would like to present to you a Black History video.
I am Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. I was born August 17, 1887. I passed away June 10, 1940. I am a publisher, a journalist, a Jamaican politician. I was the first general president of the Negro Improvement Association. I am Black History.
Greetings, I am Jalen Ezekiel, a junior at Florida State University Schools and current vice president for the Omega Lamplighters. As we progress through the history of stepping, it will bring us to college campuses all across the globe. The art of step, which has been brought to a more mainstream audience, can be directly accredited to the Black Greek letter organizations, or the Divine Nine, as they are affectionately called. The organizations, founded on the principles of scholarship, brother/sisterhood, and service, have served as leaders in the African American community. Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Delta Sigma Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Sigma Gamma Rho, Iota Phi Theta, and to save the best for last, the men that bleed purple and gold, the men of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. These organizations use steps, songs, strolls, and chants to celebrate their organization's history and show pride in the work that they do to support the communities their chapter serves. At every HBCU homecoming across the country, you are almost guaranteed to see these organizations battle in some form of stepping competition as they compete for on-campus bragging rights. These epic battles have inspired movies such as Stomp the Yard and Stomp the Yard to Homecoming to highlight the popularity of stepping that can be seen on various college campuses.
Greetings, I am Darrell Williams.
a junior at Family DRS, and a proud member of the Omega Lamplighters Mighty Light team. I will be highlighting the evolution of STEP. Stepping has become a sport outside of college campuses over the years. There are over 500 STEP teams across the United States, and many more teams in other countries and continents. Stepping has built up a following where many youth can showcase their love for this art form and compete on a national level. Almost every weekend, you will find high school and middle school students competing somewhere for stepping glory. If you go to a step show, you will see these themes, costumes, where performers transform themselves to entertain large audiences. In closing, stepping is rich in Black culture with an abundance of Black pride. We pay homage to our ancestors with every stomp, every clap, and every chant. We take stepping seriously because it is part of our history. Thank you.
I am Terrence McPherson Jr., a senior at James Israel High School and a proud member of Omega Lamplighters Mighty Light team. As we continue to celebrate Black History Month, we, the Mighty Light team, would like to share with you the history of art of step. Stepping, or step, is a form of a percussive dance in which the participant's entire body is used as an instrument to produce complex rhythms, sounds through a mixture of footsteps, spoken words, and hand claps. The origins of step can be traced back centuries to the continent of Africa, where many of the tribes will use the rhythmic sounds of stomps, claps, and chants for rituals, celebrations, and storytelling. As the African people began being sold into slavery and brought to the Americas, and to other places around the world, stepping became a way for the slaves to hold on to a small portion of their culture in the midst of the pain and hardship they had to endure. In the early 1700s, you will begin to see many revolts and rebellions by the slaves. The slaves will use chants and movements during the dances to camouflage the well-thought-out plans they were devising to attack and revolt against their captors.
And now for our special thanks to our judges.
Good evening. I'm Royal King, the founding director of the Omega Lamplighters. Tonight's event was phenomenal. I want to thank our awesome judges who have the super difficult task of picking our winners tonight. We know all of our young men are winners, but only so many of them can actually be the cash prize winners. So before we announce those winners, I'd like to thank our judges. And would also like to thank our esteemed host, Mr. Anthony Thomas, on doing a great job this evening on getting us through this event. Before we announce our winners, I want to say one quick thing. We understand that Black History Month is observed in February, and on this last day, as we reflect on the achievements of African Americans in this country, let us not forget that we don't need a month to celebrate, and we invite you to celebrate with us throughout this year at later programs. So again, thank you for your time and being here today, and without any further ado, let's announce our winners.
And now for the presentation of our winners.
The current program director for the Omega Junior Lamplighters. We want to thank the Chi Omega chapter for sponsoring this great event. This will be the third year for the Dr. Aubrey Perry Black Oratorical Showcase. Also want to thank brothers Leroy Peck and brothers Dr. James Moran for their great efforts in making this event a success. And I also want to thank our young kings for participating this year and making this event the event that it should be. So once again, I want to thank the chapter, Chi Omega, and these great brothers and these young kings for coming together and making this a successful event in 2021. Thank you.
And now, we'll have another Black History video.
I'm John Gilmore Riley. John Gilmore Riley was a prominent member of the African American community in Tallahassee. He was born a slave and died a millionaire. I was the principal of Lincoln Academy. This school was later named Lincoln High School. He was most known for his historical landmark, the Riley House. The Riley House was constructed in 1890. This house was a Nobel witness to progress.
And in closing, we'd like to say that Dr. Perry is the epitome, the color of excellence. The achievements of the Junior Lamplighters, the Lamplighters, and the men of Omega Psi Phi can all attest to his achievements as the benchmark of success. And now, here's a video featuring Dr. Perry.
Dr. Aubrey Perry has many notable accomplishments. He is a great father, husband, and asset to the community. Some notable achievements include receiving his PhD in 1972 at Florida State University, Dean of the College of Arts and Science at FAMU in 1984. Published research has been in many professional journals. Dr. Perry has held membership in the Association of Black Psychologists and the American Scientological Association. Dr. Perry, can you give us a brief summary of your early childhood growing up in Virginia?
I was born in a small town 22 miles south of Richmond, Virginia, known as Petersburg, Virginia. Petersburg has a rich history associated with the Civil War and some other manufacturing things that occurred during the era of the Civil War. Petersburg was a totally segregated city during the time when I was growing up there. So consequently, all of the schooling that I had initially was done in either private residences or a public school that was all blacks or Negroes, as we were called during those days. My early recollection of schooling occurred in a house that was run by a minister in the city, and this house served as the kindergarten house for children in the neighborhood. We all had wards in Petersburg, and I lived in an area known as Fifth Ward. So the Fifth Ward students were housed and educated for during their 6th and 7th years of age at Reverend Young's house. Now, Reverend Young was a strict disciplinarian. He didn't tolerate any foolishness or any ill-mannered behavior from any of us as little kids. So, in light of the fact that we had that type of discipline, we were well prepared for what would happen at the next level. The next level was, of course, the public school system in Petersburg. And my first public school experience was in a school called Giles B. Cook Elementary School. I never attended the first grade because I had attended Reverend Young's school and had tested out with some of the material that they traditionally taught in the first grade. So consequently, I passed and was automatically enrolled in the second grade. I mention this because when it came time for me to have my academic records checked at some other points in time, it was noticed that I never went to first grade, and consequently I had to explain to people exactly why that occurred. I did my public school early learning in Giles B. Cook, and then from there we went to the Henry Williams Middle School. It was called Junior High School during those days. And after 2.5 years at the Henry Williams School, I attended the Peabody High School in Petersburg and graduated in 1954. So that accounts pretty much for my early childhood training in Petersburg.
What lessons did you learn at an early age that helped you with your growth and maturity?
The main lessons that we all learned during the formative years were, first of all, to respect our elders and to be sure that we were obedient and obeyed all of the laws of society. We lived during an era when we had extended parents. And by that I mean everybody in the neighborhood had the authority to discipline you whether you were their child or not. As a matter of fact, some of the sternest discipline that you may have received might have been from a neighbor rather than from your own native parents. So I think that discipline and obedience were two of the early things that we learned as kids. Now obviously there were subject matter courses that we took during the early years that prepared us for our later years involvement. Our history classes, our English classes, our mathematics classes, and social studies classes were all very, very important. As a matter of fact, I was telling someone very recently that even when I was in high school, we had a course called Negro History. And this is something that you hear people talking about now, that our kids need to be well versed in Black history and some of the things that have occurred to us as Black people. Well, many of those things we learned in junior high school and high school as a part of the regular curriculum. Now, there were, and I want to paint this as a rose garden because there were some other things that were not as pleasant that we had to experience in a segregated school environment. I'll give you an example of something. At one point, our books were quite ragged and rugged, and we were told that the next year when we came back to school, we would have new books, and those of us who were in athletics would have new uniforms and new padding, etc. Well, most certainly when we came back to school, we did have different books, but when we looked at the books and some of the athletic apparel that we had, we found out that they weren't new at all, but these were turn-me-down books that they had at the white school that they were no longer using at the white school, and they gave it to us. And we would be able to look at it and see property of Petersburg High School, which was the white school in Petersburg. And we looked at some of the athletic equipment that was given to us, and again, it had stamped in there very clearly, property of Petersburg High School. So we lived in an environment where we made out with what we had, and we were quite successful in doing so. The other thing I think that the segregated system in Petersburg left us with was a sense of camaraderie with other people. We became close friends. Some of the friendships that I made as a child growing up in Petersburg, I still maintain today. That is, with those of us who are still around. But they were friendships that endured over the years, and we held those friendships to be very sacred.
What would you say are some of your memories in relation to growing up in a segregated time period?
Well, as I indicated, I think the segregated environment that we lived in gave us a sense of companionship with each other. We knew that we had to stick with each other and help each other out as Negro boys and girls. And this was very apparent in the organizations that we participated in, because at the city and state levels, some of these organizations were competitive with the students in the white schools. And we took great pride in being able to play them athletically, for example, and win, or be competitive with them in other activities such as music festivals, and found that we had talent that was perhaps even superior to what we had been told that the white students had. We were very, very prideful in what we brought to the table. So I think that a sense of self-pride and self-confidence came out as one of the early attributes of having been brought up in a segregated society. And on the other hand, it was painful for us to see some of the things that were in fact happening, especially when it came to times of entertainment. We could not attend the movie theaters that the whites attended. I was telling someone recently that I never had a pizza until I became an adult because we couldn't go to the restaurants where they had pizzas. And someone asked me about, did you ever bowl? No, I never bowled until I became an adult because we couldn't go to the bowling alleys. But we developed an appreciation for the black restaurants and the black businesses that were in Petersburg that did serve us, and I might say served us very, very well. So a sense of companionship, a sense of self-preservation, all of those I think were derivatives of having grown up in a segregated community.
From your middle school to high school times, what activities or organizations did you participate in?
Well, of course, the activity that I participated in that I enjoyed most were musical activities in both junior and high schools. I sang in the high school chorus, the glee clubs, and we had a little organization of 5 young men that we call ourselves the Charms, and we would sing at some of the local dances and other activities that went on at the school. I tried out in athletics and did fairly well until the first game when I sustained an injury, and then I found out that, well, perhaps I better try something else other than football. I stayed associated with athletics because as a result of that hip injury that I sustained, it gave me an interest in injuries and how to fix people up who had suffered injuries. So I became the athletic trainer for the football team. Did a little better in basketball, went out and played basketball and did okay. Was never a superstar or anything like that, but athletics were a part of my training also in high school. Activities associated with subject matters like the history club, the English club, and social studies clubs, these were all very much a part of my training and upbringing in high school, and I enjoyed the participation in those activities too.
Hold that.
What was the reason or reasons for choosing Virginia State College to further your education?
Well, the main reason why Virginia State College became a part of my life history was the fact that it was convenient for me to attend them because it was in the same city. Secondly, we didn't have money in my family to go any place outside of the city. And Virginia State had a rich history of producing some very, very successful people, people who eventually became doctors and lawyers, and these are people that I sort of wanted to be like as a kid growing up. So it was sort of a no-brainer to go to Virginia State because it was very, very convenient and economical for me to do so. And it's a decision that I never have regretted.
I see you have an interest in the field of psychology. You studied this at Virginia State, Florida State, and Indiana University. How did you get interested in psychology?
That's a very interesting question. I began my training at Virginia State in history. I always have wondered why people did what they did and when they did what they did. And I thought that the way to further that understanding was to be a scholar in the area of history. And I really appreciated history. But during my senior year at Virginia State, I had the option of taking some elective courses to fill out my curriculum. And so consequently, I took a couple of courses in psychology. And I had some teachers in psychology who had an impact on me like I never had before. And one was a brilliant female psychologist, Dr. Whitehurst, who taught me some things about behavior and about life, which I never knew. And I only knew that I wanted to learn more about it. And I had the opportunity to take a second course from her and a couple of other people in psychology. And suddenly I found that my interest in history began to wane to some extent, and I became more interested in psychology. But I also found a way to bridge the two, because there's an interesting approach that one can take in psychology in terms of trying to learn why people behave as they do, because you want to also learn why people behave as they did. So consequently, I was able to merge both my disciplines, history and psychology, together. But psychology became the overwhelming choice of my interests. So consequently, when I left Virginia State and I had the opportunity to pursue my education at the next level, I chose psychology as being that level. And the psychology has remained a part of my life from that point on to the present.
Now, while at Virginia State, you pledge Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Inc. Can you give us a summary of how that relationship came about?
Yes, at Virginia State, I was a member of the musical organization called the Acapella Choir, and it had some outstanding young men in the choir, men who were scholarly and also, I would say, socially adept. And I admired them. And also, I had friends who were in the areas of history and psychology, and I found that these were people who I shared interests in, and we were pretty much compatible with respect to what we liked to do. And then eventually I found that they were members of this Greek letter organization known as Omega Psi Phi. The other thing that was of interest to me was the fact that many of the successful men in Petersburg, Virginia, some of the doctors and the lawyers and the athletic coaches, I later found out that they were members also of Omega Psi Phi. And particularly important to me was one of my former professors in high school, who was an athlete and a scholar. And here again, later on, I found out that he was a member of Omega Psi Phi. And I figured that, well, these are people that I would like to pattern my life after. So consequently, I began to affiliate with them more and more. And as I said, we had compatible likes and interests in things. And thus, I eventually pledged the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, which is a decision that I am very, very proud of that I made. And I currently hold life membership in the fraternity, having been a member right now for 64 years.
Can you give us a brief time frame on what brought you to Tallahassee, Florida, and more specifically, Florida A&M University?
My journey from Virginia to Florida is indeed an interesting one. Prior to coming to Florida A&M University, all of my work in psychology had been institutional. That is, I'd worked at mental hospitals, correctional institutions, and facilities that dealt with people who were disabled physically and mentally. But there was an incident that occurred at a hospital where I was employed in Virginia that sparked my distaste for some of the political climate of things that were happening in Virginia. Specifically, there was a case which I was assigned that involved a man, a black man, who had been accused of a very vicious crime, and there was no way in the world that man could have done that atrocity, that atrocious type of crime, because I had tested him and I knew exactly what his capabilities were. But nevertheless, the political system in Virginia was bent on prosecuting him to its maximum extent. And the maximum extent in Virginia at that time meant the death penalty. And I, along with my associates, objected to the fact that this man was being railroaded for this crime that he no way in the world could have committed. So it was my dissatisfaction with the political influences that occurred during that time that led me to Florida. I remember the day in which the chief psychologist came into the office and said, well, does anybody want to go to Florida? And I broke my hand. I said, yes, I would like to go to Florida anyway, any place but here. And she said, well, I have a friend who's looking for someone to teach psychology. I said, no, that's not for me. I've never taught in my life. And she said, well, you might want to think about doing that. So consequently, I discussed it with my then wife and my parents. I said, I think I will go to Florida, and what do you think about that? And it seemed like a very interesting place to be. And so consequently, came to Florida, having not ever taught a course in psychology in my life, but received an appointment in the Department of Psychology. And during my first year, I was awarded a Teacher of the Year award. So it was something about coming to Florida in psychology that worked out very well for me. So that's how I got here.
What advice would you have for kids in my generation or age group?
I'd suggest that you, first of all, believe in yourself. Believe that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. I would also suggest that you learn your history of your people and how they have persevered through the years and overcome difficulties in order for them to attain the status that they have attained. And I think that if you develop a sense of values and morality internally, you can do anything that you wish to do. But first of all, you've got to believe in yourself that you can do it and not let anyone dissuade you from your aspirations and your desires and your wishes for the future. And I'd like to commend you. I think you're making a tremendous step right now by being a member of the Junior Lamplighters. It's a tremendous organization, and I think that this is a reasonable and logical first step for you to make in terms of realizing your full potential as a young man and a becoming scholar.